Hey there. Welcome to the Pine Island Experience podcast. I'm Joanna Anderson with my husband, Trygve. Each of our episodes will be conversations with fellow Pine Islanders.
The goal of our podcast is to share with you our experiences, what we have found to be fun, and what makes the Pine Island experience so unique.
I think probably one of the most dramatic was similar to the last boat that Nick and I just did, where he's up, another Wisconsinite that we've met at the Market Fest on Pine Island. He's actually up in Green Lake, Wisconsin. And he said, I'm not going to be there for another 3 weeks. Can you have my boat done before I get there? I said, sure. And he goes, just, take some pictures when you're all done so I can see what it looks like. And I sent him the pictures. He goes, that's not the color of my boat anymore. Nick and I got there, was like a light grayish blue, and we were done. It was a very deep blue. Even when I did my boat, my wife, she looked at it, she goes, it's not the same color anymore. I said, no, this is the color it came from the factory.
That was Chris Holzem from Badger Boat Detail, sharing what happens when a boat goes from faded and worn to looking like it just came out of the factory. Chris and his partner, Nick, specialize in restoring and protecting boats from Florida's harsh sun and salt. So how do they do it? And what kind of difference can it really make? Here's Chris to fill you in. Well, Nick and Chris are here from Badger Boat Detail. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We saw you at the island.
The market event?
Yeah, the market event. Thank you. And I'm like, look there's Bucky Badger. So we had to call you.
And we'll be at the Mullet Fest this coming weekend.
Fantastic. That's a lot. Have you ever been to that?
We were at the Stone Crab Festival. That was back in October, I think. October, November, something like that. Great.
You're going to enjoy it. A lot of people coming.
The first time we'll be attending as a vendor, but we have been to it in the past.
Yeah, fun times. Well, tell us a little about yourself. I think I know where you probably have lived. But
yes, I spent the first 45 years of my life in Wisconsin, and then my wife and I moved down here in 2006. We're still in that same home in Cape Coral, but we always liked the idea of Pine Island because it reminds us a little bit more of where we lived in Wisconsin, a little bit more rural. Our issue at this point is that we have grandchildren in Naples, so we don't want to get any further from them than they are now. They're entering into middle school, so I'm sure in another probably 10 years or so, then we'll relocate out to Pine Island.
And what's the story behind Badger Boat Detail? Can you tell us how you got started with that?
Basically, it came down to, for 20-some years, I had a boat up in Wisconsin, and then every year you'd pull it out and you'd clean it up, you put it away for the winter, and you put it back in the water in the spring, and it'd be good for 6 months. Well, I found out that same type of theory doesn't work as well down here. So I started looking into, how am I going to take care of my boat properly? And that's when I came up with, wanting to put a ceramic coating on it. And then I looked into all the different manufacturers of the ceramic coating. And we settled on a product called Glide Coat because it was, to us, the most durable. So we started doing our boats on it. And then more and more friends started asking, hey, can you do our boat? Can you do our boat? So up until probably a couple months ago, we were just doing friends' boats on spare time and stuff like that. And then Nick and I primarily work as public insurance adjusters. So this year, without being in a hurricane, we decided to kick it up a notch and, try and go a little bit more public and keep a little bit more busy and stay out of our wives' hair.
So what made you decide to focus just on boats? Is there anything else you could be doing this too?
We could be, like we did a Tesla the other day, but for the most part, the automotive is very competitive. And, it's very cut rate and everybody has a shop. And we like the idea of being outside. Boats you do outside. So the majority of our boats are either on a trailer and we bring them to our shop or they're on the lift and that we do it right above the water.
And then what made you pick a Bucky Badger mascot as your...
My sons went to the University of Wisconsin, and I've been a Badger fan my whole life. And when I first started ordering the materials, The individual for Glide Coat is also Wisconsinite. Him and his father started the company. They're over on the East Coast. And, he's like, oh, fellow Badger. I said, yeah, I'm a fellow Badger. So then as I was talking to him about ordering all the different products and stuff like that, he always called me Badger Chris. And then he goes, well, if you're going to start a company, what are you going to name it? And I said, well, we're going to have to put Badger in it somehow. And, he kind of helped me develop the name, the individual that I was dealing with from Glide Coat Products.
So if people don't know what professional boat detailing is, kind of from start to finish, how would you describe that whole process?
Well, for the most part, it's going to be people that want to do more boating and less work on their boats. They want to come in, they want to wash it off and move on in life. And what it really comes down to is we take a look at the boat to find out how much work is it going to need as far as prep work. Is it heavily oxidized? Is it a brand new boat? Now, if it's a brand new boat, we polish it once just to remove any waxes or impurities that are on it, and then we can put the ceramic coating on. If it's heavily oxidized, then we got to get all that oxidation off to bring it back to its full luster shine. And we have a meter that we put on there that tells us what the finish is when we start, and then obviously we bring it up to the shiniest finish we can possibly get it to before we put the ceramic boat coating on.
And exactly what is a ceramic finish then?
It's 2 coats. It comes in a bottle. We put it on with a sponge. You wipe it onto the surface. You let it adhere to that surface for between 30 seconds and a minute, depending on the conditions. If it's dry and humid, whatever the conditions are. But you want to start wiping it off before it starts getting too stiff. And then once you start wiping it back off, the ceramic is on there, but you're buffing it with a microfiber towel. And then whatever finish is on underneath that ceramic, that's what you'll see forever. Or, 3 to 5 years, depending on how well you take care of your boat. If you put your boat underneath the canopy, it's going to last even longer than that.
So you talked about needing the prep. What are a lot of common issues that you run across with boats in Southwest Florida?
Oxidation. So like the boat that I bought, one of the reasons I bought it is because it was heavily oxidized and I knew I could clean it up. So the individual that had that boat hadn't been using it for the better part of 4 years. And it just sat on his lift, baking in the sun every day. He didn't really do anything to protect it. He couldn't. He was failing health, had some issues going on. But so when I bought that boat, that's the main reason I bought it, because I knew that it looked ugly and I could fix it. And now it's a beautiful boat again.
And so I assume the ceramic coat then is tougher. And
yes.
Because I don't know if this is true. I've heard it, people that wax their boat, like within minutes of going back into the salt water on plane, you've just wiped most of the wax off.
That is correct.
That's correct. All right.
Yes.
So the idea of this is you're putting a long-lasting, or I guess a harder barrier?
Correct. The ceramic should last 3 to 5 years. So what you want to do when you come back in from boating is to clean it off so that the salt doesn't just keep eating away at it, because ultimately that is what hurts the ceramic finish. So when you're done boating, you wash it, you clean it up. And if you do that every time, it should last somewhere between 3 and 5 years, which obviously depends on how much you use your boat and whether how much sun your boat gets during the daytime. So if you take your boat home, if you keep it on a trailer and you take it and you put it in a garage somewhere, or if you're storing it in a barn, something like that, then that 5 years is even further extended, because for the most part, it's the time that it sits in the sun when you're not using it that deteriorates that ceramic finish.
So can you tell us one of the most dramatic transformations you've ever done?
I think probably one of the most dramatic was similar to the last boat that Nick and I just did, where he's up another Wisconsinite that we've met at the Market Fest on Pine Island. He's actually up in Green Lake, Wisconsin. And he said, I'm not going to be there for another 3 weeks. Can you have my boat done before I get there? I said, sure. And he goes, just, take some pictures when you're all done so I can see what it looks like. And I sent him the pictures. He goes, that's not the color of my boat anymore. Nick and I got there, it was like a light grayish blue, and we were done. It was a very deep blue.
Wow. Made you proud, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. Even when I did my boat, my wife, she looked at it, she goes, it's not the same color anymore. I said, no, this is the color it came from the factory.
Did you ever have a project where a boat owner thought you wouldn't be able to do much with it and you surprised them?
For the most part, I probably wouldn't get into that type of, if it's that bad, it probably needs more than just our polishing. It may need, a repainting, may need a new gel coat, things like that. And then we basically, if there's a decent finish underneath there somewhere, we can revive that finish. But yeah, we've been to boats where like, I'll be able to clean it up, but it's still going to look ugly. So you're probably going to have to get it painted or re-gel coated.
So you've talked about protection from the sun. Are there other things that people should be thinking about in terms of protecting their boats?
The sun and the salt are probably the two biggest factors down here in Southwest Florida. And for the most part, it's actually sitting out in the sun that's more detrimental. Because I think everyone, when they take their boat out, knows that you got to wash the salt water off of it, and depending on what type of soaps and how thorough you are with cleaning it. But I think a lot of what people don't realize is how hard it is on your boat to sit unprotected out in the sun. I mean, just take a look at some of your, if you leave a patio furniture sitting out in the sun for the summer and you come back, it's like, oh, wow, it's gone. Mm-hmm. Sun, water, and rain killed it.
You come across situations where somebody's tried to maintain their boat, but as you two begin to work, then you say, oh God, I think they did this. And maybe they don't know that they shouldn't have done that. So to your point, like they're doing something beyond just rinsing it off, but are they maybe putting other chemicals on it or doing something that
boat that we were just talking about, that blue one, that's a situation. He's up in Wisconsin and they rent cabins and boats on Green Lake. And he bought this boat that was being used by a different person. And he tried doing that himself. And we could tell when we were buffing it out, the areas that he tried doing, because all of a sudden it's like, oof, it's just completely different. And we actually had to go into the paint in order to clean it up properly. And then we got to the point where I was like, we can't, if we take any more paint off this boat, we might be breaking through that layer. And I called him and he said, no. He goes, get it as good as you possibly can. He goes, I know I'm the one that screwed it up. So he thought it might have been, he was trying to use acetone cleaner to clean it up. And that's pretty aggressive.
Yeah, that takes off nail polish.
It takes off a lot of things. You have to be very, even if you're using acetone cleaner, you should always be wearing rubber gloves.
Mm-hmm.
So it probably varies by boat, but from start to finish, what is it? Is it a half a day, day, 2 day? Like what's the length of time?
It all depends on what you want done and how big the boat is. So we've had some people that all they wanted done was the exterior of their boat from the water line up to the top rail. And we've had other boats where it was 100% everything in the boat, including the vinyl interiors. So anything that can get wet or get hit by the sun in a boat, we'll clean and put the ceramic finish on. There's different products that we use for, the fabrics that, like your boat cover, that's one type of product. The seats is another type of product. The ceramic coating that we put on fiberglass is a third type of product. You can put ceramic onto pontoons, and that's a different type of product. Just thinking off the top of my head, Glide Coat probably has, I would say, 20 different ceramic type coatings or finishes that you can put on for different, depending on the materials that it's being applied to.
Wow.
Can it go onto the non-skid as well?
Yes, it can. So what we do on the non-skid is we'll buff it out as best we possibly can to get it as clean as we can. And then we'll put the ceramic on that, and then we'll try and wipe it off the tops of the non-skid so that it's not slippery, but yet that it leaves the ceramic in the bottom part of it so that when you get fish guts or whatever you get on it, it still hoses right off and comes out nice and clean.
And what happens if there's like the invariable little dings that we all get boating,
Well, that's what I ask you before we start. How far do you want us to go on this? So it was a point that you made, Joanne. Are we at a boat where we can't help it?
Yeah.
So we have one of our boats that, we walked around, we showed him the dings and the scratch. He goes, it's a boat. He goes, if you can make it clean up easier, he goes, I'm not too worried about the scratches and the dents. And then we had another client that wanted those all out. And I said, well, you got to have that taken care of before we do the ceramic. I can do some little fiberglass repairs, maybe the size of a fingernail, something like that. But anything larger than that, it's, you need to have someone that really knows how to do fiberglass. And that's a whole new, it's like a drywaller. You either know how to do it or you don't.
Yeah, it's almost like if somebody was at their house and they'd punched a hole in the wall and they want you to paint it and make it look good.
Yep, right.
Till that drywall's fixed, the paint's not going to matter.
That's a very good analogy. That's perfect.
What has it been like starting a business here on Pine Island?
It's been fun.
I knew you were going to say that.
Because everybody that you're dealing with, it's like when Nick and I go and talk to someone that's had substantial damage to their house from a hurricane or a tornado or a hail event or something like that. It's usually a stressful situation because you're not coming into it where, people are happy. Their house has been dumped upside down, whatever's happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
Boats are a whole different thing because it's all about the enjoyment of the boat. And now you're going there to help them increase the enjoyment of their boat by making it easier for them to keep their boat clean. And because everybody wants a clean boat.
Yep. Well, what do you enjoy most about working with boat owners?
Probably the fact that I know how to fix their problem pretty quickly and easily. It's just, a lot of meticulous manual labor and then using the right cleaning products on it. So like some people, I tried trying to do this to get it all cleaned up. It wouldn't work. Yeah, that's not going to work, but we have the stuff that can.
So you're going to make them happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
If I can't, I just, I tell them why it's not going to turn out the way you want it to with the type of products that we have. That's why I say usually it's something where they need to probably repaint the boat or put a new gel coat layer on, something like that. And once again, there's guys that are specialists in that. And I don't want to be in a dusty situation where we're, sanding fiberglass and things like that. I just want to, have my fun. Keeps me out in the sun. I enjoy the weather.
So it's fairly new into the process, but have you set goals for the business or any additional expansion kind of thing? Or where do you see it going?
Well,
here?
one of the reasons we started the business too is we have another venture that we're getting involved with on the corner of Stringfellow and Maria Drive. We have another business venture going there for parking cars and transporting people up to Upper Captiva Island. So one of the reasons that Upper Captiva has so much trouble with that is because they really don't have a place for people to really park their cars. And you can park your car and then you go to a different person and have them transport you to the boat, and then that boat transports you up. But with this venture, we want to be able to do that all for everyone. They can park there. So, and then on the weekends, the commercial marina is open for the public. But there's a limited parking spaces down there. So now we're going to be providing parking spots. They'll go down, they'll let all the people off, they'll launch their boat, they'll bring their boat back up to where we're located, and then we'll run them back down to the marina so that they can hop on their boat and enjoy their day. And the kids that are going to be doing that while they're standing around waiting for them to come back, they're going to be cleaning boats.
Mm.
So that's kind of like how this got started. So that way they can be multifunctional. If they're so busy that they can't do any boats, great. But other than that, they're not sitting around on a picnic table twiddling their thumbs and paying them to do little or nothing.
And that'll come under the same name?
Yes. So that the boats would still be cleaned by Badger Boat Detail. And then the marina services would be through, that's called the Upper Captiva Carriage Club. You'll see that development starting to kick off quickly. We purchased that land about 3 years ago, and we just went through all the permitting for that. And there's some tortoises there that we have to be very careful of. And then there's a plant called the American pawpaw plant. No one's ever heard of it.
I was going to say, what is American pawpaw?
It grows probably to 6 to 9 inches tall, but it's an endangered plant. And we're lucky enough to have 29 of them on that property. So we had to bring the environmentalists out, and they had said in order to be able to strip the land to start turning it into parking, we would have to burn the land, burn it all down, because the pawpaw plant likes that. It doesn't want to be disturbed any other way. So that way, once we burn it all off, then we can remove the larger trees and the pawpaw plant will come back. But we're not going to be able to burn anything now for a couple more months. And we just got approval within the last month that Lee County's allowed us to change the designation of that property to commercial 1.
Now that's fascinating. So I thought they'd want you to do some relocation or fencing off or something like that. It's actually preferable to burn it. And then I guess...
Well, that way we can burn it off and it'll stay preserved underneath the surface. And then we don't have to worry about trampling it when we cut some of the bigger trees down.
I see. Okay.
Now, the next caveat to that is they will, the enviro or whoever, trying to remember the DNR, I think it is, they'll come in and they'll transplant 3 of them to a different spot on the property. And then they'll monitor that for the next 3 years. And then if they survive just fine, then we'll be able to move more. But we won't know how many more we can move until we see how the progress of those 3 turn out. So originally we wanted to have enough room for 125 cars. I think now we're approved for up to 70. So as we move these plants around over time, then we can increase some of our parking and boat storage and RV storage, things like that. But for the most part, you're never really going to see it because we're not going to change what you see from Stringfellow or from when you go down Maria.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like a kind of a high hedged, overgrown lot, and we're going to continue to keep it looking like that so that,
Still look
preserves
nice.
the Pine Island look.
You just have to wait to manage the pawpaw.
Yep. So once we get out of dry season and into rainy season, then we'll be able to get the permits to do the burn off.
So now if somebody's interested in the boat detailing services, how best do they get a hold of you or contact you or get an appointment scheduled or whatever?
We have our Facebook page. We also have our web page. And if I knew the number off the top of my head, I could give it to you real quick. It's a new number. I keep it on my phone, but if I give you the number, it's probably going to give you the wrong one. So I don't want to do that. Let's see. So our number is 239-486-2470. Yeah, I've got 2 different numbers coming to this phone.
And from what you said about needing to look at, so I assume an estimate is the first step in the process, and then upon approval, then you get the
Right.
job
We want to
scheduled.
make sure that everybody knows what we have to do. We want to make sure we know what we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I did have one individual. Well, can't you just give me a price? And I can't.
No.
If I'm going to give you just a price, then I'm probably going to give you a highball because I don't want to come in and do your boat and not make anything off of it.
Right.
But your website's pretty straightforward about the services and the
Yes.
charge. It doesn't give them a dollar amount, but it says how it works.
Well, what we do on the website, we started out at $75 a foot. So that would be as if you had a brand new boat and all we had to do was polish it one time to get all the, waxes or impurities that came along with that new boat. And from there, that's when if we have to go into actually buffing out some of the oxidation, that's when the prices get a little bit. And some of the oxidation isn't necessarily on the outside of the boat, but, like your center consoles and things like that have been sitting out for years and years. Some of those fiberglasses that we encounter have never been touched by anything other than a hose to squirt it off. And, for the most part, we want to bring your fiberglass finish up to, it's a gloss meter, but we like getting it to like 85. So we'll look at some of these interiors of boats and, the gloss meter will say 3. So that takes a lot of polishing and buffing in order to, and then we know that we're going to probably have to do that with a wool pad in the heavy compound probably a couple of times and then go back and put a foam pad on with the heavy compound and then go back with the medium compound and then actually use the polishing compound. So that's where the steps get quite a bit more involved.
Are you affected by temperature at all? And so,
Only when I sweat too much.
but I mean, like we had that 4 weeks of very cold weather. I mean, can that still be applied when it's that cold? Because I'm thinking about like painting has to, I think they say above 50, preferably, if not above 60 kind of thing.
The ceramic has to be applied above 60 degrees.
Above 60, okay.
But the biggest thing is whenever we get those cold snaps, it's always windy.
Mhm.
So then we have to be careful that we're not allowing debris to blow into the ceramic when we put it on the boat.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And then in the summertime, it can be hot.
It can be hot.
Other than you've got to be on top of it because you don't want it to dry too quickly, I think.
Correct.
That's it. Okay.
And we have, like patio umbrellas and tents and things like that we bring along so that we can tent those areas to make sure that they don't dry too fast while we're putting the ceramic on. We don't have to worry about the polishing part of it because we can do that, and as long as it's not raining.
Anything else about Badger boat detailing that maybe you wanted to bring up that we've not asked you about?
I think we talked about all the surfaces we do, like the engine housings, things like that. I know, like when I bought my boat, my engine housing was heavily oxidized, and I had to be real careful because the paint on the engine housings typically is a lot thinner than what you'll find on your boat. But I got probably 95% of my oxidation off. I didn't want to go any heavier just because I knew I'd probably be taking the paint off. And anyone who has a Yamaha with that gray motor knows what I'm talking about. I got it as clean as I possibly could. I put the ceramic on it, and now you hit it with the hose and water just beads and runs right off it. So it won't get any further oxidized, but that would be something too where, like you had said before, that's just something I'm not going to be able to get it 100% again because the paint has been that badly damaged. And that was from sitting out in the sun for 4 years.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure listening to you.
It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Love seeing Bucky Badger again.
Bucky.
We were so surprised. Yeah, go Bucky.
We hope you enjoyed our Pine Island Experience podcast. If you have any ideas for us, people to interview, or any comments, please feel free to email them to us at pineislandexperience@gmail.com. That's pineislandexperience, all one word, @gmail.com. Don't forget to like us, and you may subscribe to this podcast using all the major catchers like Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Thanks again for listening, and remember, island life is a constant vacation. We'll see you on the next podcast.